Good morning. Hi. I'm Kiel Coleman. That's Damon Keel. And welcome to the Core Administrative Leadership Curriculum. Let's start with a question. Who here is familiar with the term positive deviancy? Anybody? Great. And you're the only guy that doesn't have a table tent up, so I don't know your name, but congratulations. We try to catch up the rest of your class. So positive deviant as a term was developed in the 1990s. There's this group called Save the Children. You're probably familiar with them. They were in Vietnam in around 94. And the point of Save the Children was, let's make kids healthier across the world. So they were looking in Vietnam, these far-flung kind of remote villages, and noticed that 66% of the kids were malnourished. And they did this by saying they're underweight. There's a group of 2 people out of a group. There was about 10 folks, and then 2 of the researchers that were going there to say, how do we externally import food to these villages to get these kids up to a normal weight? They started looking and said, well, 66% are underweight, but that means that 34% of them are normal. Let's look at those families. They checked out these families, and what the parents were doing, they were feeding their kids stuff that was totally different than everybody else in the village. They were feeding them shrimp and crab and coconut and rice, stuff that was easily available. These people were all subsistence type farmers, while all the other parents were feeding just rice and some fruit and water. They also noticed that the 34% of families were feeding their kids 4 times a day versus 2 times a day. 2 times a day is a typical Vietnamese diet. They noticed that there were 3 components to these folks that they called positive deviants. And number 1 was actions beget actions which change their thoughts. Hey, I feed my kid more, he gets better or looks more healthy. Therefore, I'm going to think differently about the way I'm feeding them. This is totally different than business philosophy of the last 20 years, which is change your thought and your body will follow. Well, no. Change your actions, your body follows, and then your thoughts follow that. The second point was that they found resources around them. They weren't looking for external help. They solved their problems within their own group. The third thing was they allowed themselves to fail. Some of these kids got sick because perhaps they had an allergy to fish, or perhaps they just didn't want to eat the crabs. They had to find something else. Positive deviants describe people that look for solutions in their own group and equip themselves with tools so that they can succeed. Good morning, positive deviants. So let's talk about the administrative leadership curriculum. Why are we doing this? I want a quick show of hands. Who knows the name of your chief financial officer? It's a really good start. Okay. Now, I want to see the hands of everybody that can name the kids of their chief financial officer. Right. Oh, you can? Wow, that's excellent. So let's see here. We're missing 3. Okay, so that leaves about 93% of our group that really doesn't.
Just one of his kids.
Just one of the kids. Well, that's a great start because it's a long, long way to go. All right. We need knowledge in order to be able to impact the world around us. All right. The people in finance, our administrators, they have a certain amount of knowledge. We've got a lot more. We have a very short bridge to get to them. We can learn what they already know. They can't come to us. It's very, very hard for a CFO with an MBA to go back to med school and dedicate a decade of their life and learn operationally what we do every day. We're the people that look and see the problems around us, and by action, we can change our world. Let's do a quick exercise. All right. 1. So everybody's pretty 2 by 2. Great. Turn to the person next to you and let's give it 5 minutes. Let's see how long we can talk to each other about what we know about the administrative C-suite in your institution. Okay? I'm going to time this. So I want you to talk about who is your CFO, what do you know about them. If you don't know the CFO, talk about your CEO. Give it a couple of minutes, and then we're going to come back together. Okay? 5 minutes.
And find somebody else from a different institution.
You WBUers, turn around. Do you have files? I do have files. Okay.
Yeah. He was going to go look on the CMA because they had been uploaded to UCS for that's what the answer that everything that she got was give me the files. I will
3 weeks. Weeks.
I don't know what's happening, sir, but if you give me a file, we'll fix it.
Okay.
How about
Actually,
email? To me, that would be faster. I can listen to my email.
and those parts are
Yeah. Okay, so we have all the time.
I don't have anything else to do. I'm just
Of course, so we have pre-uploaded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slides so far. Two, what you need to do is just need to press stop when you're done with this. Go to the next one. That's it. Yeah. Oh, was it you who started?
no, I didn't start.
Okay. Yeah, this one is still loading because we just uploaded it. So
That's a while anyway.
yeah. This one has the video, so the video, how the video works, you press the play button here and it will go. Sound, we tested yesterday, should be fine. Yeah, so, yeah, just email me those two, and I will upload it for you. Okay, yeah.
The money, $60,000.
So as you're talking, this should only be about those individuals. Is everybody still talking about just those people, just the CFO? Okay. No? C-suite. Okay. So just those people, the individuals I gave you? Okay. You're still just talking about the C-suite. Okay. Who's still talking about the C-suite, like the individuals in there? Raise them high. Tamara, Robert, Renee. Okay. Great. 5. Okay. That's right. Yeah. Well, you should. Because you need to get to know them. Great. Thank you for taking a few minutes. The idea there was that we need to get to know these people. These are the folks that are impactful on your world. Hopefully today and over the next year, you will have some tools where you can get to know these folks and you can speak their language. They have a very hard time speaking yours. If you've never been in a meeting with them, you notice an immediate discomfort when you start talking about operational issues. You start talking about anything beyond the finance or volumes or the RVUs that a certain doctor or a group of doctors is generating. Our goal today is to empower you with some knowledge where you can actually talk their language and you can get to know them. And yeah, you should get to know their kids' names too. So let's get this thing going. I'm going to turn this over to my partner, Damon Keel, who's going to introduce the curriculum.
All right, so you guys have been talking a little bit about your CFO, your CEO. How many of them had their start in medical education? None. None of them. Obviously, they were residents probably at some point, but did they have spent time in graduate medical education? The universal answer is almost certainly no. They don't understand your world. They have their own language, and we need to teach you that language so you have a better communication with that and can actually get your projects off the ground in a way that is meaningful to them, not in your world. So the first thing we've got to discuss is really finance. This is where it all starts. This is the most basic form. And we're going to assume that all of you have different backgrounds when it comes to things like finance and accounting and spreadsheets. We've got to get through a lot of the basics. We're going to go deep and we're going to go fast over today, and we're going to expand on all those ideas over the next year. What does finance cover? We're going to really focus on the importance of a winning business plan and a pro forma. Those are the key pieces that you got to leave from today of how important that is. How important is it? I'll give you one example of about 6 years ago. One of my residents came to me and said, I'm just pissed off at the lack of availability of airway equipment on the floors when I'm in the unit rotating. Down in the ED, you got all this spicy stuff. It's awesome. I go up there. Sometimes I have to wait for anesthesia. They've got different equipment. Some of it's outdated. So I put together a pro forma and a plan because I started looking at all of the different airway pieces of equipment that we were doing and used an example of the code carts, which was a centralized place where everything got swapped out. It was uniform. Every floor had the same things. Yet our airway equipment was wildly variable. We looked at it and it was about $20 million over 5 years that people were spending on updated contracts, servicing, different vendors. We put together a business plan and a pro forma that showed that for $14 million outlay, we would save the institution by unifying on a unified platform our airway equipment across every single ICU in our hospital. We would save them over a period of 5 years about $5 or $6 million. I was a little nervous about presenting a $14 million plan for new airway equipment in every ICU, and the board approved it literally unanimously in 12 seconds. Because of the pro forma. That's how important it is when you're getting your projects done. So we'll focus on that knowledge gain to try to really, again, promote some projects in your own home institution. Again, we'll talk about that later, but this is the goal, is that what we're talking about today is going to help you down the road. All right, accounting. I am a health services researcher. Much of the accounting makes my eyes bleed, but this is following the money. Where does it come from? Where does it go? You have to understand the basics of how your organization and your CFO are tracking the dollars. And one of the focuses we'll be looking at over the year is how you know where your money is coming from, where it's going, really looking at stuff beyond the one piece that we're all pretty good at in program leadership, which is what? Operational expenses. Right? You get your budget from the GME office. This is how much is on salaries. This is how much on, and that's usually where we stop. And we got to go further than that. We'll talk a little bit about marketing. Who does marketing for the residency program? Right? How do you market your residency program? Tchotchkes, right? Coats. I saw a few people wearing like residency stuff here and blazing on. Mugs, scissors. That's not what we're talking about here. It's not marketing your residents in that way. You've got to understand principles of marketing so that you can sell your ideas, your projects and the things that you're really trying to get across. So how about that project that we did for unifying airway across the entire organization? Well, it started with a great business plan and finding hidden savings and a great pro forma. But even before that, it started talking with anesthesia. You guys get tired of running around the ICU, grabbing a bag and running with it and grabbing your glide scope and running to 2 floor? God, yeah, that's annoying. Wouldn't you be interested in having a unified airway cart and new stores equipment on every floor? That would be amazing. We would love that. How about ICU docs, surgeons? Are you guys training your senior surgery residents to be doing airways? Well, we don't have the equipment. Wouldn't you like that? There was a big piece of marketing and selling that was happening in the background by a number of different people when suddenly that buzz in the board meeting about talking about a $14 million outlay was, oh yeah, we have already talked with the surgeons about this. They definitely want this. And yeah, the anesthesiologists are all for this. That's some of the principles I'm talking about in marketing, not buying your residents new coats. So we'll really focus on this of building a value strategy in terms of your projects and things and where you're heading in your department, whether it's how are you marketing the idea of my new expansion of my simulation center or my fellowship. I've got a few cases that we'll focus on at the end of the day to give you some ideas about that piece in marketing, but this is an important concept that we got to get through today. Change management. Anybody taken a course, change management, read anything, maybe picked up an article in Harvard Business Review on it? This is something we ignore in healthcare leadership at the graduate medical education and undergraduate medical education. This is an entire science that has been focused and vetted for years in corporate America. And this is an important piece that you've got to understand of how you're going to implement your change and the opportunities that you have and how you're going to actually really focus on this idea of developing a framework for transformation. It's not an MBA program that doesn't heavily focus on this piece of it. It is so important, it's often ignored. All right, decision making, specifically rational decision making. We're going to give you some tools on how to actually make decisions that are beyond just, should we serve pizza to the residents for lunch? We're talking about being able to map out a decision, looking at different ways you can actually get to a consensus on a decision, and very specifically, the most important thing is recognizing when that decision is no longer a choice. And Dr. Coleman will spend a lot of time going through examples of how we can really get to better decision makings, not only within your organization or your group, but at the institutional level. All right. Let's take a little moment and introduce all of our faculty. They come from wild and crazy places, very disparate experiences with tons of expertise, and it's an outstanding group. So let's bring them up, and they're going to spend a little time talking about why they're here today and what they're going to bring to all of you. So why don't y'all come on up? Do you have a cheer?
All right. I'm Brahim Mardolik. I am the chair of emergency medicine at Staten Island University Hospital. I am also the Western Region VP for our service line, which means I cover about 6 EDs total. I'm also the VP of research in my institution, which means I'm administratively responsible for research, which is not doing research. I'm convinced that they thought that I could add, and I'm a doctor, so they gave me research, and that's kind of how it started, and we've actually been able to do some cool things. I think I'm here because I have to admit I actually kind of like accounting stuff, and I have to admit that I like it not because I like looking at spreadsheets, but because I like the fact that I feel, honestly, at this point in my career, that once you've presented an accounting sheet to me, you can't lie to me anymore, because it's all right there in front of me, and as long as I know how to look at it, you can't lie to me. So that is something that I'll tell you how I personally got to that point in a little bit when my talk starts, but that's actually why I don't mind it, because I feel the amount of knowledge and power it gives me over a situation is very helpful.
I'm Dan Martin, and I'm from Ohio State. I am the vice chair of education at Ohio State, also the program director of our EMI program. I went back and at the age of 60, graduated from an MBA program at Ohio State. I was the oldest person in my class. I think I had the most fun in the class. We did all kinds of things together as an executive program. But one big thing that I always wanted to do is when I first came on the scene as a program director back in about 1990, it's my first year as a program director, I realized that the funding for resident education was absolutely crazy. We were in a system where our clinical revenue paid for about 4 to 6 residents per year, which was unheard of. How could I get that to change? So that was a really difficult quest for me. And going to the GME meetings every month and squawking about how unfair that is, that was not the right way to do it. That was the way I did it for a while. But I was really surprised to learn a lot of different things during my MBA. So hopefully you'll get a few of those today.
Hi, my name is Dusity Sangam. I'm from the University of New Mexico. I'm double boarded in clinical informatics and emergency medicine, and so my academic niche is in informatics. There's a lot of change in the informatics world, so I've become very good at convincing people to do things that they may not generally want to do. So that's why I'm here today, is to talk about change and how you can maybe manage it better.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Bikin. I'm the current program director at University of Rochester. I think the main reason that I'm here is that I received my MBA prior to coming to medical school, and I think at that age we do a lot of things that our parents tell us to do, and basically my dad said, you need to get an MBA before you go to medicine. He's been a long-time doctor and really convinced me of the benefits of understanding business and the strategies that business has to offer in medicine, so I'm really happy that I did that, and I've been able to apply a lot of those skill sets to my current job and to getting to my current job. I'm here to convince you that marketing is one of the most important things you can do for your residency program, especially if you're, challenged by geography or some other things. So, hopefully you guys will enjoy the talk and, add some to this overall topic here.
Hi, I'm Kiel Coleman. I'm at the Carilion Clinic. I'm the director of osteopathic medicine there. I'll be talking to you about rational decision making. And I'm the guy that went to medical school at 35. Terrible decision. So I'm teaching you decision making, and I've already made my bad ones. As the DOME at Carilion, I also work at the GME office. Responsibilities include all special reviews, administration of new programs, and review of new programs, and also all policy work. On the finance end, I'm the chair of our acquisition advisory council. So any professional or clinical acquisitions that we do, that's my finance hat. In strategy, to my chagrin, I'm the only physician in our C-board and the senior management team that is actually doing planning for our 5-year plan for our institution. We need more people that can do this, and that's why I'm standing in front of you now. Thank you.
And I'm Damon Keel. I'm the program director at Virginia Tech Carilion. I have been there now for 11 years. My primary interest in this area and expertise is I did a health services research fellowship. My big area of interest is in practice variation. But on top of that, I've sort of developed an area of looking at potential cost savings associated with decisions, specifically around how residents are a strategic asset, specifically in the Department of Emergency Medicine. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of that later on this afternoon as we close out, and we'll continue to work with all of you on some of the examples that we've done, not only in our institution, but trying to help guide looking at hidden savings and revenues that you have in your own programs that you can leverage for additional expansion or projects in the future. So again, thank you all for coming here.
Thank you. All right. So I sent out a missive a week or so ago. You guys signed up for this course, seeing the objectives, and one of them was that over the next 12 months, you will develop some project. In a perfect world, we would see 20 projects the next AA. They would all be presented and say, this is what your physician colleagues can do, what educators can do in their own department, their own institution, to improve the world around them. Some of you may have no idea what that project is. Some of you may already be halfway through, but we're going to help you through this year. Each of you has a name placard, number one, because I'm terrible with names, and it's really good for me to have a cheat. But more importantly, it was a way for me to be able to code. So each of you has a color that color is actually assigned to a physician, academic mentor, and that's out of our faculty. I did this by time zone because communication is everything, and if you're trying to have a meeting at 10 o'clock at night because everybody else is on a different coast, it doesn't work for you. So let me go through this very quickly. So let's start on the west side. So red folks are with Dusaday, red for New Mexico sunsets, whatever. Let's see here. We go a little bit farther east. Green, Dan is our money man, so green is with you. Okay. Then we look at Dr. Ardolik, who is blue, New York, blue, whatever. Ryan, God bless him, he needs some sunshine up there in the upstate. So he's yellow. I am orange because the real UT is in Tennessee. And Damon's hot pink because he's Damon. What our hope is today, we'll have a lunch break. Please don't go out and find your buddies. Instead, find your new buddies. So find the folks that have your color. Get with that faculty member, and let's have a little meeting. Maybe you have a project in flow already. Maybe you don't. It might be an opportunity to generate one now. What we'd like to see is over the next month, before our first online meeting, that everyone will have some idea of a project, even if it's just a title. But the more developed you can be around your problem, the thing you'd like to solve, the farther along you are. I've given a schedule for our monthly meetings. They'll be through GoToMeeting. We will test drive this amongst the faculty. And our first one is in May, the third Thursday. I believe it starts at 7. I'll check that again. And that's Eastern Standard Time. All times are on Eastern Standard Time. PM. Monthly meetings with your faculty mentor are offered. These can be in the form of an email exchange, or it can be a phone conversation. That's something that I encourage you to talk over lunch. All right? Any questions right this second about what we're doing? Yes, sir. The handouts, thank you. So CORD, being environmentally conscious, has said we're not going to put out a bunch of paper. So actually there's handouts for almost every talk. The only reason you have folders is because there are two problems that you're going to need something to scribble on. So I printed those out yesterday. But everything else should be online. Okay, we will have those before the end of the day. It was in the email. Okay. Other questions? Okay, let's get this thing started. And by the way, this is set up sort of like a business curriculum. When you do an MBA, and I think some of you may have, but when you go through one of these things, let me tell you, if you're doing an executive program, the first 3 months are painful. It's just jet assist, wounding with accounting and finance. But it's also the teeth of any business degree. We are doing a very, very compressed leadership curriculum here. So your first 2 hours, we're doing it while everybody's coffeeed up and fresh. So buckle up because Dr. Ardolik and Dr. Martin have a lot in store for you. Thank you for being here.